All right, so today we're talking about sorting. Again, this is the clutter movement, and we want to have a discussion about sorting, about how to do it, when to do it, why to do it, and how to make it successful for you. First of all, I want to say that there are two very important questions that you need to answer before you ever start to sort. Because if you don't know your why, if you don't know the reason you're doing this, other than other people want you to do it, then it's going to be very difficult for you to stay motivated through this. So there are two questions that I want to ask you. I want you to write the answer down, and I want you to put the answers to these questions up on the refrigerator. Write them on your mirror in the dry erase marker. Have it on an index card whenever you start to sort. The first question I want to ask is, if you woke up tomorrow and your home was just as you wanted it to be, what would your life be like? Not what would your home look like. What would your life be like? Again, if you woke up tomorrow and your home was just as you wanted it to be, what would your life be like? The number one answer I usually get to that is stress-free. And think about it. I had heard somebody, actually Dr. Tolan, say once, hoarding is a full-time job. Now, that's not because people are out acquiring and like people might think. It's because it's always on your mind. It's always in front of you. It's always in your behavior. It's always in your thoughts. Sometimes, you could go to a movie, you could go out and go take a walk, or you could play the piano, but you don't want to do it because if you have the time to do that, you should be paying attention to the clutter. So really what I want you to think about is, what would it be like to wake up tomorrow as if you had done this yourself and your home was just as you wanted it to be? Again, not like somebody else wants it to be, not house beautiful, not like Martha Stewart came in, but just like you wanted it to be. What would your life be like? The second question, what is something that you want to do that you are not doing right now, that you cannot do or are not doing right now because of the clutter? Again, what is something you want to do that you're not doing right now because of the clutter? Now again, the answer to these two questions is first and foremost the most important thing to figure out before you figure out anything about how, why, when to sort. Again, write the answers to those questions down. Keep them in front of you. Keep in mind too, these are value-based questions that lead to value-based goals. What that means is this: if I say, what is your goal? And you say the goal is to have a clean couch, I will say, what will the clean couch do for you? So rather than having the goal of a clean couch, I want to know what cleaning that couch will do for you. Having a clean couch, would it mean that you can have people over? Would it mean that you can kind of sit back and relax when you're watching TV? What would that mean to you? Not what would it look like to have a clean couch, okay? And then again, those things that you want to do that you're not doing right now because of the clutter, how important are those things to do for yourself? And how many times have you just decided not to do them because, gosh, if I had time to do that, I should be working on the clutter. Think about that. That's a real good reward and motivator. If I can do this, I can get back to knitting. If I can do this, I can get back to playing the piano. Maybe you can access the piano, but you're just not wanting to do it because of everything else that's going on. All right, so we've gone over the first issue. Find out your why. Why do you want to do this? The second thing is just doing it, like Nike says. And of course, it's not that easy, but how do you get started doing it? It can be tough because it's overwhelming. One of the first things you have to do is set a schedule. It's got to be consistent. If you saw the video that I posted the other day about the rule of 5, it's more important to go out with an axe and hit a tree 5 times a day. You're going to get more done, and it's going to happen. That tree will eventually fall, rather than going out and trying to knock it all out in one day. You have to figure out a way to make this something that you can work into your life on a very consistent basis. Maybe not a daily basis, but a very consistent basis. Because we all say, life happens. This happens, that happens. I've got all these responsibilities. How can I do this? That's the question. How can you do this? Let's figure out a way to fit it in. The other thing too is about, is it important to you? We've got the answer to those two questions, but now, is it important to you at this point to start sorting? And for some people, honestly, it's not. It's more trouble to get started than it is to not do it at all. For those of you that I've done groups with before, I use the story that I heard years and years ago about a hound dog. There was a man who was lost out in the country. He's driving around and completely lost. This was clearly way before GPS when this story came out. And finally, he drives by this old farmhouse. He sees a man in the front porch on a rocker, and he's like, great, I'll go ask him for directions. So he goes up to the man, starts asking him questions, and he notices that the man has a hound dog laying next to him on the porch, and that dog just keeps wailing like he's in pain and just rolling his head back and wailing. But the man he's talking to doesn't even seem to be bothered by it. So he keeps talking to him again, working on getting the directions, and there goes the hound dog again, just wailing, and like, I can't do, just head back, but not getting up and moving. He's like, what's... Finally, he asks the gentleman, he says, what's wrong with your dog? He keeps hollering like he's in pain. And the man at the house, or the owner of the dog, says, oh, he's laying on a nail. And the gentleman asking for directions says, why doesn't he get up? He says, well, it just doesn't hurt bad enough yet. Now, I know that's a simplistic form of the point I'm trying to get across, but that's really how it is. Sometimes it hurts less to stay in what we're doing than it does to get up and move forward, because sometimes the fear of commitment, the fear of getting up and saying, okay, I'm going to do this, but what if I fail? What if I'm not able to do it? What if I get overwhelmed? It's a lot of work. Those things can knock us back down to where, you know what, I'd rather lay on the nail than get up and start moving forward. And again, that is something that's a legitimate thought process and feeling that people have. So again, find your why, and then figure out, is this something that's really important for me at this point to do? Next, how do you get consistent? The first thing you've got to do is write this down. You have to figure out when you're going to do this. If you don't write a schedule down, when are you going to do something? It's like going to the grocery store without a list, which we all do. Even though I'm telling you this, I often forget. And I remember one particular time a couple of years ago, I only needed an avocado. I went to the store. I came home with an $82.73 receipt. And guess what? No avocado, because I didn't write it down. How many times have you run errands throughout the day and thought, God, I have all these things to do, let me just go out and do them, and you get home and you missed one or two things that you were supposed to do because it wasn't written down. You didn't commit the time to do that. So it's very important to commit the time to sorting, because no matter what techniques we go through, no matter what skills and strategies we're talking about, it's going to be very difficult to do them with any success if you're not being able to do this consistently. I think it seems one of the hardest things to do as far as sorting goes is write it down. And I think that comes from the fear of, if I write this down, I'm committed. And what if I don't do it? What if something comes up? What if I try it and it doesn't work? Well, there's that fear. But again, try it. See what happens. Maybe you schedule it and you say, well, that was a bad time to schedule it because I'm really not alert at that time in the morning. And then try the next week and say, okay, let's try to redo this. So scheduling 2 to 3 days a week to start, and 15 to 20 minutes max. And I know a lot of people will say, well, I'm not going to get anything done in that amount of time. Again, it's baby steps. It's one step at a time. It's like a staircase. You take little steps, a couple inches of steps. It doesn't seem like much, but at some point you're on the first flight of the building, or the first floor of the building, and then you're on the second floor of the building. So it's those little consistent steps that will make this work and will show you progress. But you have to start somewhere, and it's better to start at the beginning than jumping into the middle. It's like, let's say you wake up and you're like, I really want to get back in shape. I used to be a runner. It's a beautiful day out. I've got some brand new shoes. I'm taking off. I'm going running, and I'll just run a mile or so. And then you get into the mile. You're like, gosh, I'm feeling really good. And you run 5 miles and you feel great. And then you go home, and the next morning you can't get out of bed. When's the next time you're going to run? Likely never, because you're in pain. It was too much. You're overwhelmed. So again, I stress, you need to schedule when you're going to do this, and literally start with 2, maybe 3 days a week for 15 to 20 minutes maximum. If you do more than that, great, but don't push yourself to do more than that. The other thing about scheduling it that's really important, I hear so many people often say that, well, I want to go do these things. I want to go to the movie. I want to go for a walk. I want to, go out with my friends for dinner. But if I have the time to do that, I should be home sorting. If you schedule those 2 to 3 times and they are on your schedule, for example, hypothetically, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, as soon as I have coffee, I'm going to spend 15 to 20 minutes, I'm going to do this. If that is on your schedule and you stick to it, guess what? After that 20 minutes on Monday, you're off the hook. You did what you committed to, and now you can go do what you want. You can give yourself permission to say, listen, I did what I said I was going to do. Now I have permission to go start living my life. Because focusing on the clutter completely isn't working. You have to be able to still live your life and do the things you want to do, and sometimes do the things you don't want to do when other things are taking up your time. The key is, how do you work on this consistently, build it into your life no matter what's going on? How do you make it a priority among priorities? Again, I'm going to say this again. How do you make sorting a priority among priorities? So oftentimes people tell me, well, I'm told this should be a priority. This is a priority I should take. Well, with this issue with clutter, oftentimes there's lots of other things that are boiling to the top. You're spinning a lot of plates that you're trying to figure out. There's a lot of priorities going on. And to put this aside until everything settles down, what is the reality of that happening? So again, trying to figure out, how do I make this a priority among other priorities? And the key thing is to just take the basic first steps to getting it started. So that worst case scenario, you're spending 15 to 20 minutes, 2 to 3 days a week doing it. And once you get started with that, if you have a week where, geez, I have some extra time, go for it. But if you have a week where, you're taking care of, family members, you've got people in from out of town, you're visiting, you've got school going on, you've got all these things going on, then you still have just those 2 to 3, 15 to 20 minute sessions. All right? All right. So moving forward with sorting, another thing that I want to talk about is that, there's some basic guidelines to follow. There absolutely are. But what you have to realize is that everybody is different. Everybody comes into this issue with clutter from a different perspective, from different backgrounds, different experiences. And with issues with clutter, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, there are some serious mental health issues that go along with this that make sorting difficult. Decision making, categorization, being able to focus, being able to pay attention. Those are things that make this a bit difficult. So in order to say, if you were to say, well, I'm just going to do it like somebody says to do it, well, maybe that way isn't taking into account your trauma, your loss, depression, ADHD, things like that. So what you want to do is find the basics of what people say works, try it, and if it doesn't work, figure out why. Not, I tried it and I failed. So a good example is, a lot of the work out there done by, and again, this is no way saying anything negative about professional organizers, because please understand, I do not mean that at all. What I'm saying is that when you hire a professional organizer, most professional organizers bring in a system that works for most people. You are not most people, all right? This is what makes you unique. This is what makes you interesting. You're not most people. So doing a system that somebody else finds works for them does not mean it's going to work for you. You have to be able to experiment with these tools, experiment with these suggestions or guidelines, and see how you can make it work for you. And if it doesn't work, that doesn't mean you failed. It means it just didn't work for you. And let's find a new way. Another thing, the book, the KonMari method, it's a great book. I think it's somebody's going to have to help me here, something of tidying up. Sorry that I don't have that handy for you. But a lot of people have that book. A lot of people given me that book. A lot of clients I've worked with have given me that book because their family members gave it to them. Speaking of, Facebook groups like what we're doing now, I found that there's a lot of groups out there where there are family members that are in groups like this trying to figure out how best to help their family member. So speaking of, again, the KonMari method, nothing against that method. It works fantastically for a great majority of people. That being said, if you have issues with clutter that include the mental health piece, that include maybe depression, anxiety, ADHD, OCD, trauma, loss, processing issues, difficulty making decision, that method is not going to be ideal for you. And what happens a lot is people will buy that book or any organizational book that's like, I'm going to do it, and they start with this. And it's like, I can't do this. See, I can't do this. But the truth is you can do it. You just have to find the system that works best for you. All right, so I'm going to look at my notes real quick to make sure that I haven't run over and forgotten anything. Here we go. All right, so we talked about scheduling. We talked about being able to manage our lives and make sure that this is being done consistently. So now let's go ahead and talk about what sorting is. A lot of people talk about with sorting, what am I going to get rid of? Another thing that we need to do is kind of reframe that. Think about sorting is not a negative thing. Sorting is about what it's going to give you in your life. If I don't have this item, what am I gaining from that? If I have clear space, what does that do for me? Not, I'm going to have to throw all these things out and I'm losing these things. Think of it, if these things are not here and this space is clear, what does that do for me? Whether it frees up time, diminishes the stress level, whether it, helps you be able to do a hobby that you want to do. Again, think about the sorting that way, not as a punishment, but as an opportunity to get that thing you want. Remember those questions we asked. What would your life be like without the clutter? And what is something you want to do that you're not doing right now? So again, think about not, oh, here we go, I've got to declutter. Think about what this is going to add to your life rather than what it's going to take away. The other thing I wanted to mention too, and again, sometimes it's semantics. Some people like, for example, some people don't like the word homework. They like the word experiment. Things like, it's all semantics. So whatever works best for you. But think about it this way. You want to not look at this as a punishment. And when some people think of the word discarding, the definition of discarding is like to get rid of, right? What I like to prefer to use is the word release. You're going to release the items. So if it's an item that is in your way that you're not really using, that's not benefiting you, release it. Let it go. Whether it's going to the trash, whether it's going to recycling, whether it's going to be donated, doesn't matter. There's keep and there's release. Okay, so keep and release. All right, so starting again with the sorting. There's, the traditional way to start is the boxes, right? Everybody's familiar with the boxes. You've got keep, you've got discard, which we're going to change to release, right? You've got donate. And then also there's the option for a maybe box. The maybe box can be really helpful to keep you from getting stuck. Sometimes you'll get started on that 15 to 20 minute session and you pick up something and you're like, I don't know, I'm not sure, what if, and all the pieces of the issues with clutter start coming into your head, all those decisions, all those options, all those opportunities. During that 15 to 20 minutes of sorting, you don't want to get stuck. So that maybe box is a great place for if you pick it up and you take more than 10 seconds to make a decision, put it in the maybe box so you can keep moving forward. Then the next session that you do, pull that maybe box out and try to work through that again, okay? So again, that's the standard way to sort. But like I've been talking about, the standard way doesn't work for everybody. And it doesn't mean it doesn't work at all. It just means you have to take pieces of it and, figure out a way that it works best for you. So for example, let's say that, you don't like sitting in front of a table with boxes and a pile of things to go through. Let's say that's just too much and too overwhelming. Maybe you need to, instead of focusing on a pile, focus on a category. Maybe, let's say there's a lot of recycling in your home that you know that you can recycle. Rather than sitting and sorting, get up. Go through the room or go through the home, whatever you can do in 15 minutes and say, I'm just going to go through and pick up the recycling this time. Rather than sitting, because some people with sitting and sorting, it works for some people and others it's just too overwhelming. It's just too much. The other thing with sitting and sorting, you can also do that with categories. You can sit and say, rather than having the whole pile, if you've got a box of magazines, if you've got some newspapers, if you've got, a pile of clothes, rather than just going through random things, just sort the clothing. Pull the clothing out of the pile and just sort through that. So again, trying to find those little pieces of it that work for you and that don't, rather than saying, I can't sort because I just can't sit here this whole time. I'm sitting here and I'm just staring at things. I don't know how to do it. Figure out why and then try another approach. And again, that's what this group is good for, because you can say, I was sorting and I was trying to do the clothing, but I was finding myself really nostalgic and with the opportunities and couldn't do anything. What do I do next? Post that in the group. And somebody would likely say, don't work on the clothing. Let's go find something else to sort and figure it out. So again, with the sorting, sometimes the categories that we talked about, keep, release, donate, and what's the other one? Maybe, work for people. That works great. But sometimes it doesn't work so much. Sometimes it's better to do minimal categories to start and come up with the categories as you go. But keep in mind, you don't want to have more than 3 categories. So for example, let's say we take a pile and you start sorting through it, and you pick up something and you say, okay, I'm going to release this. I haven't read this. I'm getting rid of it. That's fine. Great. Put it aside. But then you pick up with something and say, yeah, I've been really wanting to look into this. I wanted to see if I can still get this discount on this movie. I don't know. For example, this, rather than sorting it into a keep, this could be something that's sorted into a box that just says action. I need to take action on this. So I'm going to put it into the action box. And continue going through things. So again, sometimes having those boxes out that are so defined as keep, release, throw away, things like that can be difficult for people to use. If you're finding that difficult, then just have a box that says action and then have your release pile, which that release is either the donate or the going into the trash. So action, release, which is again another action, but action, release, and throw away. All right? With that also gives you something to do afterwards. Now, keep in mind, when you're doing your 15 to 20 minute sorting session, you just want to do the sorting at that time. That's not the time to take out the trash. That's not the time to go put something in another room. Don't do that until the 15 to 20 minutes is over. And if you find that 15 to 20 minutes, then after it, well, geez, now I've got another 15 to 20 minutes of putting stuff up, don't put it up then. Wait till the next session and do that, okay? So again, don't get yourself overwhelmed and lost in the weeds on some of these things. So again, 15 to 20 minutes of the sorting. Find a way that works best for you. Do you work good sitting in front of a random pile of things? Do you work better sitting in front of a pile and pulling out specific categories, like I'm just going to deal with mail today, I'm just going to deal with magazines, I'm just going to deal with clothes? Do you work better moving around the house, saying, you know what, I'm going to take a box, I'm going to walk around the house, I'm just going to pick up magazines. And again, maybe you just want to narrow it down to a room or just a table. You just have to find out what works best for you. So Vanessa, good point. Leaving the room can be the downfall, yes, because it's easy to get distracted. It's easy to go to another room, put something up, and then there's other things going on, and you don't want to do that. Again, if you're going through with one category in mind, leaving the room for some people works. But again, knowing yourself and knowing what doesn't work means you can avoid that option, okay? So now again, like I said, it's very important to remember when you're sorting that 15 to 20 minutes, 2 to 3 times a week. Again, I'm stressing over and over. You have to write it down. You have to stick to it. And don't go overboard. Just do those times and then work to build up, all right? So when you're doing those sessions, do not sort after that. Don't go putting things up. Make sure that that's done after the fact. And if you don't have time to put things up afterwards, do that on the next session. So maybe one session you do your sorting, the next session you put up the things that need to be put up. And here's another thing too. Sometimes putting things up, well, maybe there's not room for them. Maybe you need something to go on a bookshelf and that bookshelf's full and you haven't gotten to that yet. That can be overwhelming too. So instead, put it as close as possible. There's that rule, Ohio, only handle it once. It is a good rule in theory, but sometimes there's just too much clutter and issues that, you can't just pick it up and put it where it belongs. So instead of doing that, we just leave it alone. So what you want to do is put it as close as possible, even if it ends up in a box that says bedroom, and put it as close as possible as you can so that it's out of where you are working. So again, those things that we've gone over, let's talk about this again briefly. The answer to those 2 questions. Number 1, if you woke up tomorrow and your home was just as you wanted it to be, what would your life be like? Number 2, what is something you want to do that you're not doing right now because of the clutter? Answer those questions, write them down, post them, put them up, post them, actually, yes, post them in the group here, put them up on your refrigerator. Anytime you sit to sort, keep those in front of you. After that, what you want to do is schedule the time to do the work. If you don't schedule it, and this is the hardest thing for people to do, I know, to put pen to paper to say, this is when I'm going to do it. We schedule other things. If it's somebody's birthday, we're going to take somebody out for coffee, we're going to meet somebody for lunch, we got to go to the doctor, we schedule it, but we're not scheduling what will work for ourselves. But once you find the why, make sure that you're willing to do the work and then schedule it 2 to 3 times a week, 15 to 20 minutes. If you go overboard, great. I don't recommend it, especially to start. And remember again that once you've done that, if it's on Monday at 9 o'clock and you get it done, Don't keep yourself from doing other things you want to do the rest of the day because you should be focusing on the clutter. No, you already did the clutter. So it lets you off the hook. It gives you permission to do the things that you want to do with your life. And then sit down when you're doing this and figure out a way that works best for you. Just because you sit down on Monday at 9 o'clock and you sit down in front of a counter and you have a pile of mail and, kitchen things going on, if you sit there and just literally are so overwhelmed and staring at it for 15 minutes, don't think that that's a failure. Figure out why. Why am I not able to do this? This is too overwhelming for me. Well, if it's too overwhelming for you, the next session, don't sit there and do that. Find something else. Again, like I said, maybe just doing that one pile is too much, so pull out categories. Maybe just sitting is too much, so move around. But the important thing is to do something. And if what you're doing isn't comfortable, isn't working, figure out why. Throw it to the group. Let the group help you figure it out. Because again, everybody in this group, as you know, has the same lived experience. Everybody has been through what everybody else, not maybe all the circumstances, but they get this process. So share those things when you're getting stuck. And then after that, again, when you're doing this consistently, remember, it's just baby steps. Reward yourself. A good thing to do when you're scheduling this, that was one question that always comes up, is how do I know when to do this? When you schedule it at a time when you've already got a routine. So let's say you get up in the morning, you go take medication, you make your coffee, and you sit and you read the newspaper for 15 or 20 minutes. And you do that every morning like clockwork. After that, or before it, schedule your 15 to 20 minutes because you're already in a pattern. If you schedule, let's say for 3 o'clock in the middle of the day, if you're not in the habit of doing something around that time, then you could miss it. You could, other things come up and then you don't get to it. So find a time when you've already got some sort of routine built in. Maybe you drink your coffee and you do the 15 or 20 minutes and then you read the book. Again, some way to reward yourself. And remember, we talked about at the beginning, finding a way to, again, it can be semantics, but to put this in a framework where you're not feeling like this is I just don't want to do this. Find a way to think about how the sorting is actually creating something in your life rather than getting rid of something. What's going to happen if you do this? What is the positive piece of being able to do this? And again, keep in mind that just because whatever system you use isn't working doesn't mean you can't do this. It can be done, but you have to figure out what works best for you. And if you're finding yourself struggling with that, put that information on the group. Most of the people in the group can answer these questions for you, but if you want to tag me in it, if you have a question for me specifically, just tag me in the comments. Say, this is where I'm getting stuck. I tried this system and it didn't work. Help me. I'm needing to figure it out. All right, so for those of you, again, that are watching live, it's been great to have you. I'm going to finish up here. I feel like we've gone over pretty much all we can. There weren't a lot of questions, but I'm sure there will be once other people are watching this later on, because we did have some people say that they weren't able to attend right now. So put your questions in the comments. We will get back to them. I'll come and review this again tomorrow, and we'll be able to watch, or I'll be able to go in and answer some of the other questions. But also, if you have a question and post it in there, and you're somebody else in the group and you say, oh, I know how to handle that, please absolutely work together with this. This is a team effort. We're here to support each other. This, I hate to use the word can't, but this can't be done alone. You need that support system. And the support system is a place where everybody in here gets what you're doing and gets where you're coming from. So please use the group to do that. Again, if you have any questions, let me know, tag me in anything, and let's get to sorting. Talk to you later. Take care. Bye-bye.